Hello League of Legends fans, so today we are going to be looking at the pre-Season 6 Graves rework, which is pretty much the most unique thing in League of Legends. That is, auto attack is a cone that fires multiple shots that deal varying amounts of damage and are reloadable up to 2 charges. So that's pretty interesting, and I wanted to be the first to look at the items to see how they interacted with the auto attacks and what the auto attack actually is. So first off, I wanted to try Trinity Force. Does Trinity Force apply your auto attack damage for each individual shot? Do the shots from Trinity Force have a reduced amount of damage? So what I decided to do was just take it to the jungle. I decided to launch an auto attack at these small Krugs, and I dealt 166 damage and 126 damage. After that, I procced an ability and aimed for the Krugs again, and I did 337 damage and then 126 damage again. So from first glance, it looks like it's not going to apply to everything hit. That only the one you're targeting or the first target hit is going to receive that Trinity Force proc, then the rest is going to take damage as normal. I also hit the large Krugs just to see how the damage would change, and it shows pretty much the same results. So the bonus damage from Trinity Force only applies in one stack. For this case, it was 160 something damage, and it's not going to be dependent on how many buckshots land. If just one nicks an enemy or it's the enemy you're targeting, it's going to apply the full Trinity Force. Now to double check, and on a single target, I decided to hit the Gromp, and it pretty much shows the same thing. I get a set amount of bonus damage no matter how many shots affect the Krugs, and it's consistent with my 169 bonus damage on a Trinity Force Spellblade proc. Next up, I wanted to see how crit interacted with all of these, so I kind of did the same thing. I went in the same position, I attacked in relatively the same manner. I wanted to see how much bonus damage I applied if we got multiple shots or just a single shot, and it kind of reveals the entirety of how Graves' auto attack works. With a critical hit, you're going to fire 8 shots. So it kind of creates more of a spread, but overall the damage is going to be roughly doubled because you're hitting just a double amount of hits and the damage applies. So the way to see Graves' auto attack is like a cone, and the entire cone is an auto attack, not each individual bullet. So it doesn't matter how many bullets hit the target, it's going to apply off the new Destiny passive as just a chunk of damage, and then crit, and then Trinity Force, and then everything else applies on top of that. So that's just going to be what turns into the damage. And then I was just kind of hitting on other monsters with 100% crit chance, and it just kind of shows the same thing, that it's going to be a bulk of damage, then everything applies, not individual damage for any targets. Not individual damage for each bullet. This also applies for Blade of the Ruined King. How busted would that be if you could send out 4 to 8 shots of Blade of the Ruined King procs? Well, that's not how it works. After running around and hitting all sorts of jungle camps and whatnot, that's going to be the same consistent flat damage no matter how many shots you land, so each individual buckshot only applies to your AD, and then item effects do come afterwards. Now I wanted to see how attack speed worked, because Graves is very interesting when it comes to attack speed. No matter how much attack speed you put onto Graves, it's going to look like a very low number because it factors in the reload time, so it's both shots, then the reload, and then that calculates your attacks per second, so it comes off as a pretty skewed number. Even with all of these recurve bows and over 120% bonus attack speed, I was only getting 0.88 attacks per second, but it looks really funny when you're just out like clearing minions really quickly. But now we're starting to get into where item builds come into play. What does Graves want to do more? How many more attacks per second can he be launching depending on the cooldown? Now it looks like you're able to attack really fast and reload in a reasonable amount of time, so attack speed is somewhat necessary, but high amounts just have very, very, very strong diminishing returns. After that, hey, what about Runan's Hurricane? Runan's Hurricane is a terrible item on Graves because remember, it's going to take your whole auto attack. So anything inside of that cone or anything that's going to receive bullet damage is not going to get hit by Runan's Hurricane. So anything inside that cone isn't going to happen, and then the Runan's Hurricane is only doing 25% damage to targets outside of that, or targets behind the bullets where the cone isn't going to reach. And in most cases, you're not even going to get off all of your Runan's bolts because everything else is inside the cone or in your auto attack range taking damage, so the bolts don't really affect anything at all, and it's just not going to be good for much. And then getting back to no attack speed or low attack speed, I was trying to figure out how effective stutter stepping was. There is that little bit of cocking your gun from the reload that you can cancel with a stutter step, so you can do that and get a little bit of efficiency that does make up for not having a ton of attack speed if you have no attack speed items on you. Other than that, I was also looking into combos for your damage. Now Graves has a really nifty combo that whenever you use quick draw, it also reloads an auto attack while you're quick drawing, and it resets your auto attack timer. So if you cancel an auto attack straight into a quick draw, you're going to have 2 charges again, so you can use 2 auto attacks. After that, you're actually reloading while able to cast spells. So then you can throw out your end of the line, your Q. After that, as it's like doing damage and stuff, you're going to be reloading passively, and then by the time your Q finishes, and even a little before it finishes, you're going to have your 2 auto attacks again, so then you can pump out more damage, and by then you're resetting a lot of your quick draw cooldowns, so you can just kind of cycle into auto attacking and resetting your auto attacks, while also building up as much ammo charges while still putting out great DPS. This is going to be how Graves works, and it shows that you don't need attack speed as a core stat, and it just kind of reinforces that. As for getting into the finishing builds, I was just feeling that, you need your penetration item, you need your hard damage item, you need your lifesteal. You pretty much just get to pick and choose from whatever list of core 80 carry items you need, so let's go and break that down. As I mentioned earlier, you just need like a very high damage critical hit item. That's going to be your Infinity Edge. I don't see any cases where you're going to want to give this up, so that is going to be a very strong core item. After that, the new Essence Reaver, which gives cooldown reduction, which means you're getting off more Qs, more Ws, more Es. You're getting more damage off while you're trying to play around with your auto attack timer and your reloading. So with a just basic build, you're going to get 40% cooldown reduction, which means your quick draw is going to be very powerful. You're going to be getting that up really quickly, and you're just going to be able to put out a lot of damage, as well as have your ultimate ability up on a very regular basis to clear minions, and even really good poke like a Lucian ult, so you can use it in many different ways once you have this high amount of cooldown reduction. After that, I was thinking Berserker Greaves. Even though attack speed isn't that insane on Graves, we do need that core attack speed, and I feel that Berserker Greaves do give a really good amount with its now 30% attack speed. After that, we need a penetration item. So one of the last Whisper upgrades, depending on what you need. Do you need the Grievous Wounds because your opponents have control? Is the Mage building tanky? Do they have a really heavy tank on their team that you might just need the Giant Slayer for? And if there isn't a situation where those apply, I feel the Black Cleaver is a very strong item because you're just peppering damage across the team. So if you're hitting multiple targets, shredding a little bit of armor, refreshing it with a lot of different duration and stuff. It also gives health, so if you're in close quarters with an opponent, you can do a lot of damage, and by the time you combo, you're shredding a lot of armor and getting more attack damage than if you were to get one of the last Whisper items, because it now has 55 AD. After that, I was thinking you do need a crit item. We can max out the cooldown on our Essence Reaver. We can also get a bit more critical strike and attack speed. So with this, I was thinking Phantom Dancer or Static Shiv. Phantom Dancer is probably going to be the best option in many cases with Graves, because you're going to be in that brawling situation, that he isn't just a long-range marksman trying to harass, that Graves gets into the fight and then pumps out ridiculous amounts of damage. So in those 1v1s inside of the fight, or even just skirmishes, you can use Graves as a split push in this situation. You're going to be able to outduel many different people because of that reduced damage from your Phantom Dancer. Then you have movement speed, critical strike, and you're going to get a ton of stats from this. After that, you need your sustain items. So you will need Bloodthirster or a Death Stance. I feel Death Stance is going to be better on Graves because you're doing a lot of ability damage as well, and it just heals from the amount of physical damage you do. So that's going to be pretty powerful on Graves, as well as making it really hard for you to just get knocked down a fight. If you're taking massive amounts of damage, you might be able to sustain it up. With the Phantom Dancer, you're just going to be taking a lot of reduced damage overall. So it's going to let you be fairly bruisery as long as you're building up your true grit. That's why if you have that Black Cleaver going, you can become fairly tanky and difficult to kill while still having over 400 attack damage and just doing absurd amounts of damage. Now this isn't a full Graves guide, but I did want to show my masteries. I was thinking that by going with a little bit in the pickpocket, if you're looking for a lot of trading and harass in lane, might get some gold over time, and you just try to poke down your opponent while also building up your own form of sustain and then scaling into late game for very high amounts of damage. This is just personally how I play. Probably crap masteries, but it's the first day of Graves coming out. As for runes, I do attack damage and armor penetration, that I want to try to shred as much of my opponent as possible and get the rawest amount of my very high damage, because from our new Destiny passive, our auto attacks start doing more than our attack damage. That if we close range a full crit on someone with all this attack damage, I've actually hit 2,000 on a cannon minion. I think it was actually a bit more, so once I get my full build. So it does get really fun, but pretty risky to play the Graves, that you can still chip from the side, but once you go in, you need to keep your cycles going, you need to keep your combo, and that's going to be how you use Graves. So if you guys enjoyed this video, hopefully this gives you a clear idea of what you can do to use Graves, and I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for watching.